Welcome to the SimTech podcast, where we explore the fascinating world of clinical simulation, innovation, and the incredible people shaping the future of healthcare training. I'm your host, Craig, and today we're diving into an extraordinary journey that spans continents, careers, and cultures. In this episode, I sit down with Rich, a seasoned simulation enthusiast working in the Middle East. Rich shares his inspiring story, starting from his time as a combat medical technician in the British Army to his current role in a dynamic and rapidly evolving healthcare environment abroad. We'll talk about the skills he's gained in the military, how they've translated into his simulation career, and the challenges and opportunities of working in a global setting. Whether you're curious about career transitions, international simulation work, or just love hearing about the unique life paths, this episode you won't want to miss. Hello and welcome to another episode at the SimTech podcast. Today we're going to be jumping back into the community to get to know one of its members. And today we have Rich. Good morning/evening, Rich. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Craig. Great to meet you.
Yes, good. So normally we get you to open up with a very corporate introduction. And what tell us about yourself, Rich?
Okay, so potted history. I started off with the British Army as a combat medical technician. Then I became operating department assistant, which is now known as operating department practitioner, which is a fairly unique role to the UK. If you're not from the UK, we're kind of a part anaesthesia tech, part scrub tech, part PACU nurse, part ICU nurse, and part respiratory technologist or therapist. I've also completed a physician assistant program, and I've spent a lot of my time working outside of the operating theatre, either as a resuscitation officer or doing other roles. And a lot of them have been involved with education. In the UK, I was kind of known as a resource guy. In the Middle East, where I've been for the last 10 years, I've kind of fallen into simulation and now become known as a simulation guy. And I've worked in a number of the countries out in the Middle East, in a number of different centres in various roles. And that's here we are today.
All right, so let's rewind a little bit. You said you was in the army for a while, and you was a CMT.
Yeah.
Whereabouts did you work as your CMT?
Nowhere fancy. Spent a lot of time in Wales. Spent a lot of time washing up, and a bit of time in Germany.
Germany. That's one of the places that I never got to experience, but I heard a lot of stories, especially back in the day. Spend most of your time drinking, I suspect, over there.
Well,
buying BMWs.
The biggest threat we generally faced was bars running out of beer. That was the key thing. But thankfully, we had a very good resupply chain with the NAFI back in the day.
Yeah,
the yellow handbags were easy to come by.
How did you find yourself joining the army?
It was just one of those things. Didn't really know what I wanted to do when I left school, and it was just weird. I joined the local TA unit that happened to be a medical unit, and it could have been a signals, it could have been infantry, it could have been anything.
It's generally how they got me. You know, I walked past one of the career offices kind of thing. Just walked past it one day. Before you know it, I'm in, and I'm doing the touch screen test to check what kind of jobs I can get. And then the officer in there was like, "Oh, why don't you be a CMT?" I didn't even know what a CMT was at that stage. Before you know it, that weekend I'm up in Scotland doing my 1.5 miles and my press ups, and it was that quick.
Yeah, and then you find out the plain truth where it actually stands for canvas maintenance technician.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you find yourself working in a hospital unit of some description.
Yeah, so I ended up doing more man days than the permanent staff instructors, and then started getting more involved in the medical side, and was volunteering for medical cover and did some interesting attachments. And then looked at different roles. I didn't want to be a nurse. Paramedics at the time were still relatively in their infancy in the UK, and they weren't registered at the time, and the training was still quite varied. So the operating department assistant role looked enticing to me. It was very much a mix of hands-on practical work as well as caring for patients in a highly technical environment. And that was it. Yeah, I signed up for the course, took some interviews, managed to get myself on the 2-year program, and then qualified.
And then the rest is history, kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and then obviously you decided, for whatever reason, that the army had enough of you, so you left.
Yeah, it was a bit of both, and sort of you probably appreciate internal politics. You've always got someone with two stripes who thinks they're far more important than they actually are, and yeah, I discovered a few other interests along the way as well. So it's sort of yeah, we parted ways, but I've still sort of maintained contact. I did the Battlefield Advanced Trauma Life Support Instructors course as a
Mhm.
civilian. I've still done some medical covers and been involved in some projects with different units over the years since I left. So I still keep in touch and still got a couple of other projects in the pipeline at the moment as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all
How
good.
do you think the army does sim? Do you think they do it well?
Well, it's people talk about the history of sim, and it's been postulated that the first simulation was cavemen trying to simulate driving woolly mammoths off cliffs so that they could hunt them. Um, I would argue the first organized simulation was when you had the first organized armies, because that's what armies do. They're either fighting, now the role has changed, they're either fighting, providing humanitarian support, or preparing for those. And the best way that they do that is through simulation. Um, it's one of these things that I didn't realize how much sim I was doing at the time throughout
Yeah,
my
I
career.
was exactly the same. I didn't know how far this rabbit hole really went until I left the army. And one of the things that I wish I could take the knowledge that I've learnt now within the NHS and being specifically simulation back into
Yeah,
the army.
I wasn't doing simulation. I was going on exercises. We were having hospital exercises. We were on the range having target practice. We were going on runs that were timed with specific goals. Um, and yeah, it was one of these when you look back. I mean, I was young and stupid at the time, but yeah, it was all part of simulation. I was being having makeup put on me and bits of cattle bones and given a pump of fake blood to squirt out to simulate a fractured neck, fractured shaft of femur injury. I didn't realise I was a standardised patient at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think certainly my experience as the British Army and working with other nations is that they do simulation extremely well. It's their bread and butter, and certainly back in the day, the conflicts were not as active as they have been in recent years. So the training was all focused on what are you going to do if this particular scenario comes. My role was part of the British Army of the Rhine, so that had a very specific remit and a very specific role to perform, which thankfully was never needed. But things go round, and we're in a very similar position now as we were back then. So I think the army does it very well. The army has the resources to do it. Is a key thing. Even though talk about budget cuts, anybody, no matter what branch of the armed services they're in, will spend a lot of time doing simulation, be it on
Did you ever
exercise.
see any high fidelity equipment in the military?
High fidelity. When it comes to medical stuff, no. Well, I say no. It was certainly very low fidelity tech wise. We had very ancient ambu airway trainers and IV arms. That was as high tech as we got.
Yeah,
But
you
when it
never
comes
saw
to
like a sim man or
no,
anything like that.
this predates that. You know, Resuscian was high tech. If you had a Resuscian that had one of the traffic lights on,
Yeah.
you were doing well. But high fidelity, yeah, I think setting up a hospital under canvas and running through the systems testing and patient flow. Again, didn't know that's what I was doing at the time, but that was pretty high fidelity. Having patients or standardized patients made up in moulage, going through the reception, then being triaged and then sent to whichever department, be it resus, be it the wards, be it pre-op. was all very realistic. And the fidelity that was created was very high. Trying to do our hospecs in NBC in environments was also quite interesting. We had umpires manning different stations, looking at different things. And I remember on a big exercise, we had one umpire was following the rules, shall we say, and enforcing the rules that were given. And when it came to feeding the patients, when they were coming from a different block, they had to go through an airlock system to be decontaminated. And he made the hot food wait in the decon area and wouldn't let it through. And everyone's kicking off, going, come on, we've got bandsmen in there, we've got infantry guys there, they want their food. So, yeah, this is an exercise, and you don't get your food until it's been in this area for 40 minutes or an hour or something. And people nearly came to blows over it. And it kind of got me thinking, well, look, it's only an exercise. We shouldn't, just give the guys hot food. But the reality is, this is what's going to be like if we do have to get mobilized and we are activated. So taken seriously is something that I think is really important. And it's kind of something that I had drilled into me from an early stage.
Yeah. And how do you think they would do, or how did they do things like debrief? Because I, from my experience, the simulation part was really well, but they didn't really follow a structured debrief model. It was pretty much just, do it again, do it better kind of thing, or do more press ups until you're better.
Yeah, my experience of debriefing was right. Index, get this stuff cleared away, and then you can go to the bar. And I think certainly what I noticed was it was more the officers and the command positions that were taken away to do the debriefing rather than us ORs. So no, I didn't get it. So debriefing was something that came in as a concept very much later in my career.
Was anything like human factors ever brought up?
No, that was sort of predated that sort of concept. That for me, it was mainly some clinical skills, but mostly system testing. Again, looking back, I didn't realize what it was. So, for instance, if we were on the wards, any disposables or consumables that were required were put in a Lacon box at the end of the bed. Yeah. So we could test that. So if you needed a medication that wasn't on the ward, someone would go to med stores, get it signed up, bring it back to the ward. That would go in the box. And then it was a case of looking to see, have we got the right capacity? A classic example was I'd left and I went back as a civvy to the air show at Fairford, International Air Tattoo. And they ran a opening exercise in the med centre, which was based in a hangar. And the scenario was particularly large plane had come down into the crowd, and we'd got X number of mixed casualties, both adults and paediatric. So I was a resus officer at the time, so I was plunked in resus. And these kids are coming in with severe burns and all sorts of weird, wonderful injuries, theoretical, not sort of made up as high fidelity. So I'm performing, various techniques, and we're getting these kids anaesthetized. We're doing rapid sequence induction, and we've got all these kids tubed. But it was one thing that we discovered afterwards. We had one ambubag in resus, and we got 5 kids intubated. So how are you going to manage that? So that was something I fed up to. I was invited personally by the CEO at the time and said, look, you've only got one BVM. My suggestion is that you have a stock of mass casualty equipment that can be deployed anywhere. But when you have instances like this, you buy 100 disposable ambubags, because everybody was using reusable ones at the time. And it's going to cost you X amount, and it's there if you need it. So that was something they fed back, and that gave them contingency plans for, okay, it's all well and good us having a mobile hospital, but if we haven't got the kit to manage this, then, we're going to have egg on our faces when the inquiry comes, but also people's outcomes and aren't going to be good for the patient.
Yeah, and I see the transferable skills over to like an in situ within the NHS. You're not really focusing on, everybody knows how to treat the patient. They've been a nurse or a doctor for 20 years, but yet they still don't know where the folder with all the guidelines is kept, those kind of things that,
Yeah, and that's something that, although I work in a simulation center and we were equipped with high fidelity mannequins, we've got an AV system, learning space, and all that sort of stuff. I prefer and I really enjoy doing my in situ stuff, which I do on a regular basis. So I'm very fortunate. That's what really gives me a buzz, is that we're doing it where people work, with the equipment that they use. When you have the debrief afterwards, you've got very little excuse for, if this is a real scenario, I would have done this, or if it was in the department, I would have done that. If we're running a malignant hyperpyrexia case, it's a case, okay, we'll apply the ice. Okay, where's the ice? I don't know. Where do I get the ice from? I don't know. It's your department. Off you go.
You said you're getting the ice. Yeah, go and get the ice.
Find yourself a bucket and off. Make it so. Number one. So that's, for me, is the beauty of in situ sim. Is just it takes that fidelity to that next level, and I just find that a really valuable way of teaching and of learning.
How are your participants' attitudes towards in situ training? Because here at the moment, we're struggling to get people to come to our in situ training, as they're always, when training's on, too busy. Those kind of situations. Do you get a good turnout?
Yeah. So where I am at the moment, we're currently doing it in different ways. So I have some regular slots with some of the departments, and we do it at a regular time, particularly in the emergency department. We know sometimes are less busy than others. So we plan it on a certain day. So people kind of expect it, but they don't know what the scenario is going to be. And in this position that I've been in almost 2 years now, not once have I seen somebody respond to a sim and see a mannequin and then, it's only sim, and turn around and walk away. I have experienced that in the UK in previous centres. And basically, it's, if you're trying to introduce something new, I think that's the key thing, is about having the stakeholders involved at an early stage. You don't get all the stakeholders involved. You get the managers, clinical directors, they generally come, but you don't get all the staff nurses, all the registrars, all the allied health professionals around the table, which I don't think you necessarily need. But if you get an individual, what I tend to do is, in the first instance, if they're still around, or I try and find them, because often they're in the middle of a sim, if they walk out, I then track them down and say, okay, what was the issue? And so say they're genuinely busy, that's fine. If it's just that they weren't engaged or weren't interested, then okay, fair enough. I'll explain to them why we're doing this. We're looking at a quality improvement initiative. We're looking to improve patient outcomes. We're looking to help individuals learn and develop as a part of a team. If they still don't want that, then generally what I have done in the past is escalated that to their clinical director or their program director, whichever. And then they start playing nicely after that. That's what I found. I was doing stuff in one hospital, and I walked. It was on the paediatric ward, and I walked into the paediatric ward to find the ward manager in the storeroom with a child on a ventilator. I said, "Oh, okay. Looks like you're very busy then. So we'll perhaps come back next week." He said, "No." He said, "Do it now." I said, "Are you sure? You look as though you're stretched." I said, "Yeah, we are. We're very stretched.
It's not going to be better tomorrow.
What are we going to do if another kid comes in now?" I said, "Okay, fine." So it's about getting the right people involved. And I think once people have had a go with sim, they've seen the benefits, they get hooked by it. Whether you like it or not, if you're a healthcare professional, you're going to be doing sim at some point. I know there's a big argument about whether the life support style training is simulation or not. I think that's spawned the entire sim industry, really, if you go back to it. Certainly in the UK, if you look at a lot of the centres, the reason why so many centres have ladle mannequins is because it's often come from the resus department. Somebody got a old sim man, or sim man classic as they call them now, because the ladle rep came round, and it was basically ladle or METI at the time, and which is now CAE or Elevate Healthcare, and the price difference between METI and sim man was phenomenal. And METI could do certain things that SimMan couldn't do, but not at 4 or 5 times the price. People weren't willing to pay that. And then more and more people cottoned onto this. And certainly, I don't know if it was like in your area, but in the West Midlands, the deanery would pay for simulation equipment for the medical students. So a lot of centres were able to kit themselves out and pump prime themselves on the back of teaching medical students. But of course, they'd only be doing that maybe 1 day a week or 2
It's
days a
exactly
week.
what we're doing. Yeah, most of our budget comes from undergrad.
And then you can use that for the rest of the week to train everybody else.
Yeah,
So it's a unique way of funding things, but it's knowing what system you've got, and when you have a lack of funding, how you can use what's there available and get the leverage of what cash you can get and resources to develop your system that way. And certainly most of the systems in the West Midlands were based around that, supporting medical student undergraduate education. And I've built on from that. And there's been some amazing programs in the Middle East, in the West Midlands. And I work with some amazing individuals there that have developed some amazing centres. And it's down to I think it's down to your creativity. That's the thing with sim, whether it's finding somewhere to work, finding a space to do sim, finding somewhere to get the equipment and to make the funding available. And then the hard work starts. Then it's creating the scenarios. Then it's having the creativity to make those realistic and then to bring them to life. And that's the thing with sim. I think it's attracted a mixed bag of people, is what I would say.
I completely agree. I think the foundation is people, and if you've got the right people with the right attitudes and they're really enthusiastic, and they're motivated and they just love sim. If you've got that sorted, everything else can be taught. You can teach people tech and all this, but you can't teach them, to love sim. Really, you either love it or you don't. And I feel like sometimes there's a lot of legacy issues with maybe nurses where they've had bad experiences with sim. They've been either thrown into sim where it's been used as an exam, OSCEs, those kind of things. So they've learned to hate sim. So when they come here, it's almost like they've got this overwhelming anxiety where they just sit back and they go within themselves. And it's not until it's done and they're like, I don't even know what I was worried about. I actually really enjoyed that.
I certainly agree with that, particularly the nursing point. What I found is, certainly over the last 10 years in the Middle East, is a lot of people are in very senior positions, not because they've earned it, but because they've stepped on people along the way, and it's the me show. It's all about me. And particularly when they try and turn a debrief into look how much I know about this. And that's the one thing, whenever I'm supporting anybody or offering guidance for debriefing, first thing I say is, less is more. You shouldn't be doing the talking. You should just pump prime the candidates or the participants and get them talking. And if you're doing more talking than they are, then something's not quite right. And certainly when I first came out to the Middle East, it was there was a lot of that. And I think that has a very negative effect on the participants. And I agree, a lot of it was nursing based, nursing midwifery. So I can see why a lot of them have been disengaged by it.
Do you run or are you involved in any kind of faculty development over there?
Have been in the past. We're just sort of, the centre I'm in is relatively new, so we're just creating our own now at the moment. So that's kind of one of my main projects on the go. So it's something that we're developing. And my main emphasis on that is to try and break things down, looking at a modular setup, so people can access it more flexibly, and having different components. I've worked with a lot of people that have. It's what I call Ormonde's Wizard of Oz approach to academia, which is kind of a thing out in this region, is that most people need to have a bachelor's degree for the roles, any role, no matter what you're doing, in healthcare or out of healthcare. And master's degrees have kind of become the standard. They've kind of almost replaced bachelors now. A lot of places you won't get promoted unless you've got a master's degree. And particularly universities, the expectation is that you have a PhD. And I've been sat around many tables with people who are far cleverer than me, with many, many letters after their names and before their names, in an educational position, in a senior educational position, and they can't string a learning objective together. And particularly when it comes to sim, they will do some strange things. They will always go off piste. Oh, he's doing well. Let's make him go into VF.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the objective of the scenario. Let's stick to the objectives. And then when it comes to the debriefing, oh, you didn't do this, or you didn't do that, and it's like, well, we're not supposed to be judgmental. We're supposed to use good judgment rather than being, accusing and trying to put people down and make yourself look better. And I think I don't know. I've gone in circles with that one. I've had periods where I've had a lot of people that have this negative approach to getting themselves into simulation. Along the way, that's tailed off quite a bit, and I'm now thankful that a lot of the centres I've worked at since then have been mostly positive about sim and putting sim in a positive light, but also taking it's a team sport. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about us. And ultimately, in healthcare simulation, it should be about our patient and how we can make a difference for them.
Yeah, we're very much there. We like to say, look, no sim is better than bad sim. And we don't like having, bad habits around here. And sometimes we invite people as guests to come along and observe and get involved in sim. But most of the time, you'd need to have done a faculty development course to go in there and be a debriefer, because we see a lot of those bad habits that you just mentioned. But I don't really know where it comes from, because, you'd think actually these people have, the doctors, most of the time, the consultants, if they're leading a debrief, you would think, that they've had some kind of training somewhere along the line of how to debrief. So I wonder why, that these same habits of, teaching rather than debriefing appears in debrief sometimes.
Yeah, and it's kind of, people still want to be the sage on the stage rather than the guide from the side. And some people have that sort of, they like the adoration of people, standing at a lectern and people listening to them.
Yeah.
Although nowadays, I defy anybody to be able to engage an audience that for that length of time. Whereas if you go to any conference, half the time you look across and you'll see, at least a third, if not more, of the audience are on their mobile phones or on their laptops.
Yeah.
So keeping that audience engagement has become more of a challenge now. But there's the other thing that we have certainly used to have in education, is thankfully has changed now. But if you had a degree, you were clever, therefore you could teach.
Yeah.
So you could have a degree in woodworking and you're now teaching woodworking. But just because you've got an experience or a level of knowledge of a particular area, it doesn't mean you're able to teach that.
Yeah, I mean, you see
or
that
to
in the
share that
military as
knowledge.
well, don't you? Because,
Yeah.
you'll see your young officers going in and, they'll have a degree in philosophy. And now they're a platoon commander, it's just, it's like, where did this come in,
Yeah, and a very wise staff sergeant once said to me, "You learn from your mistakes." So, in which case, I've had one hell of an education. But then someone, I can't remember if it was Socrates or Plato. Someone else showed me a quote from something else that said, a wise man learns from his mistakes, but a clever man learns from the mistakes of others." And that's something that I take into sim and debriefing, is that's what we're doing. Is that, if we've got a group of 5 or 6 people, maybe only 1 or 2 of them will be in the scenario, but everyone's learning together. When I create a scenario, I generally try to create an assessment tool as part of that, so that we can have a peer assessment as well. So I prefer not to share the objectives of a scenario with the participants before the scenario. So I know some people are against that, but I
I don't
find
know,
that if
it's a bit unusual to me. It's almost giving them maybe the answers before they go in.
so for this scenario, the objectives are technical objectives are to recognize ventricular fibrillation and to treat ventricular fibrillation.
I
The
mean, in
scenario is over in
fairness,
15 seconds. They
yeah, I
go
mean,
in.
in fairness, we have done it a few times where we gave them the scenario, but only because we're having no volunteers. And so as a tool to maybe reduce anxiety, saying, look, this is what you're going to expect. Who can handle this kind of thing? But we wouldn't give him it as a standard.
Yeah, I had an interesting situation recently where I'd shared the scenarios with the faculty for a session that was coming up, and put in bold letters, please do not send to the participants. And I was having some issues with Outlook, and it skipped the 3 letters. So it said, please do send to the participants.
Oh, no.
So they sent them out. And it was a case of, okay, fine, let's see what happens. But I think, again, there's quite a lot of evidence out there that shows even if the participants know the scenario that they're going into, it doesn't always mean they can perform well.
Well, I mean, as an objective, I mean, it's an unwritten objective, is that you want the participants to learn the scenario, really, don't you? So what the worst is they're going to go away and learn in their own time the scenario, so they're good at it. If that's the worst that's ever going to happen, I think we could take that sometimes, can't we?
Yeah, and I think even when I've seen that and it's happened, they still don't know it, because it's how you set it up and how you create the scenario. And when people talk about fidelity, a lot of people still think high tech is high fidelity.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the small things that you can create in the environment and in the pre-briefing to make it that real. And you often find that people do come out of a scenario in different states of emotions, but they forgot about the two-way mirror. They forgot about the cameras and the microphones. They forgot that it was a plastic mannequin and not a real patient, and really throw themselves into it.
Yeah, and when I do the intro to the sim room, I tell them that every time. I was like, at the moment when you first come in, you'll be very aware that you're wearing a microphone, because I've just pinned it to you. But I can guarantee when the door opens, you're not going to worry about the microphone or the cameras, because we go to quite in depth to make you quite immersed. You're gonna. It's almost like you go into an instinct, and you're gonna go straight into your CABCD or your ABCDE.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did this morning. We had a session with medical students, and you've got them connected to the monitor. The alarms start going off, and you can see it. You see them going through those different levels of anxiety and distress. And then afterwards in the debrief, we had some very varied responses and emotions came out. It's quite an interesting one today.
Yeah. Do you ever have anyone that may cry or have a little bit of a breakdown?
Yeah, in the past I have. I've had people.
How do you deal with those kind of situations?
Sensitively is a key thing. Sort of what I tend to find works well is give them space, let them calm down. I've had people walk out of scenarios in the middle because they've got upset. Typically, I found it's through frustration of their own performance, or sometimes they've identified gaps in their knowledge in the middle of a situation, and then it's become too much. They don't know what they're doing next, and embarrassment that they're in front of other people, their peers, and the people that are facilitating it, and they have been able to perform to that level.
Yeah. I generally find that the best people to almost decompress them are the peers. Because as an instructor, we're always going to say, look, yeah, you're fine, you did well. And they're not. I don't think we've got much credibility there. I think the best people to tell them and understand are the people in the room that you sat next to.
Yeah.
So we tried to encourage them to go back in, and no one has ever been mean to those kind of people. They've always been really understanding and very helpful in that process.
And that's something that I always sort of preface before a session, is that we talk about debriefing, and it's kind of the concept of karma, of what goes around comes around, and we're all here to learn. If someone's made a massive mistake, they generally know it in most cases. Sometimes you get the odd arrogant person that hasn't got that self-awareness and thinks that their performance was perfect. But by and large, people, if they forgot to give a medication, forgot to do a particular thing, most people identify that themselves.
It's almost good, isn't it, that people go in and make a big mistake, because making it there, you're going to remember that.
Well, this is exactly what I say to everyone when we go in. We play by Vegas rules. in most cases. That what goes on in this room stays in this room. We've had I've certainly been involved in some situations in the past where someone's performance in a simulated situation has given us cause for concern. Um, and on a few occasions, we've escalated it to their managers. I've not directly been involved, but I know of other centres where they've actually escalated it to the regulatory bodies.
Mm.
And I think it's unfair to do that on the back of, if you're going in with simulation, we're saying like this is Vegas rules. If here's a chance to make
Yeah.
mistakes, then we need to stick to that.
I mean, I'd be very worried about the reputation of the centre if that got out. They'd be like, well, if you make a mistake in that centre, they're gonna grass you up straight away.
Yeah, you get struck off. It's
Yeah.
it's not good for repeat business.
That's no, that's they've got to send your anxiety through the roof,
Yeah.
And you want it to be almost a very safe environment, but then you do kind of have. Do you have the responsibility to flag it up, or is it a teaching? Have you got a point there to actually teach and learn
I've had a
from?
couple of situations where it's I've had concerns, and particularly if it's a one-off scenario and someone doesn't do well. Okay, well, again, I'll discuss it during the debrief, and if they still are showing a lack of awareness, I'll take them to one side and have a discussion with the individual on a one-to-one basis. But if you're on a structured program that might last 2 or 3 days, and you see the performance is consistently poor, and again judged against their peers, everyone starts off at an A level and then gradually improves. But when I've had these sort of cases, I've always triangulated it back with their clinical practice. So I've never made a complaint on an individual based on their performance in the sim center or in a sim situation, but triangulating that with general other things, patient complaints, staff or peer complaints in the workplace. Sometimes people don't actually tell you the full story about why they're sending someone to see you. I remember a case where I had a member of staff was sent to me because they were being performance managed, and they wanted me to run a particular scenario to cover specific key things about emergency patient treatment. And I said, yeah, that's fine. I'm quite happy to do that. So I said to this person, I didn't know them. I was completely objective. And developed a couple of scenarios around what the managers had asked for. And they were hoping that I was going to castigate this person and say, right, okay, we can definitely fire them now. They met the objectives. They achieved the goals that were designed by those scenarios that had been pre-agreed with the manager. And the managers were actually quite disappointed that I didn't give them, the ammunition to load the gun that they wanted. And I think that's when you look at, so from an education point of view and an assessment point of view, there's the phrase of doves and hawks. You've got those people that are kind of will look at things in a positive light and look at performance in a positive light. And you've got others that are hawkish in their behavior and want to pick out the bad points in everything. I think there's a fine line. And for me, I look at, when we're doing SIB, I look at what would that mean to a real patient in a real situation. If there's serious concerns and they're repeated and they're consistent, then that's something that you need to look into in a bit more depth. But if you this is what I say to everyone else, if you make a mistake, if everything goes fine, brilliant. We've got something to talk about to make sure everybody understands why it was fine. If things didn't go fine, brilliant. We've got some more to talk about. And you're going to tell me what we could do to improve that. And that's the thing with any instructor is you're sitting in this, certainly on the other side, I thought these were godlike experts that absolutely knew everything there was to know about this particular subject. And then when you become an instructor yourself, you realize that someone even cleverer than you has written it all down on a bit of paper for you and you've got all the answers there. And it's a very different side when you're seeing it from that point of view. And you do have quite a lot of influence as an instructor or a facilitator. And I think that's where, going back to what we said before, some people let that go to their heads. But I think it's, sims are time to make mistakes. I've had the fortune opportunity to visit one of the local airlines out here. I went to see their training facility, which is
Nice.
absolutely amazing. They've got real full-scale simulators. It's the cockpit simulators that are all on hydraulics and everything. So we went for a session to discuss some research projects, and they had booked out the Boeing 787 Dreamliner simulator for us. So we got a chance to go in that, and said, right, does anybody want to have a go? It's like, I get to fly a 787. You're
I think,
joking? Yeah.
of course, is the answer.
Yeah.
I think we've all had that thought where, the pilot's now had a heart attack. Is anyone capable of landing this Boeing? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, and
bring it on.
I think I'd give it a go now, having seen what I've done.
I mean, how hard was it? I mean, is it intuitive or?
Well, you've got a massive bank of all these buttons and dials and things, and if you're not, an aviator, which I certainly am not, it's very confusing. But they broke it down for us in layman's terms and made it very simple. They showed us their equivalent of a part task trainer, which is kind of like a single cockpit with all the controls on there. You still have the screens, but they're not as interactive as the real ones are. And then they move on to the full simulators. Obviously, the time is more expensive in the real sim, so that's limited for certain exercises and stuff. But the difference between the Boeings and the Airbus is that the Boeings are, if you pull that thing, you're literally pulling on cables that are connected to the rudders and the steering. And it, to me, as a novice, it felt very realistic. One of my colleagues had put the thing into a nosedive, and I was trying to pull it off. The alarms are going off, going pull up, pull up, pull up.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling on this thing like Billy-O, trying to get this thing to come up, and it saved the day, and we didn't crash into Vegas, thankfully.
I mean, it's slightly worrying because most of the pilots that I've ever seen, they're normally like 80-year-old and really scrawny. I mean, how are they going to deal with pulling up these cables?
Well, that's it with the Airbus. It's fly by wire. So you push it, it doesn't actually, it sends a signal to another device that then puts the energy through. So I learned quite a lot about pilot training that, I won't share that with you today. Maybe it could be another podcast.
We're actually working on a project to deal with airlines. So what we want to do is what we've been doing a lot of work with 360 video and using like synchronized headsets, so 15 headsets at a time. What our doctor wants to do, our CTF, our clinical teaching fellow, she wants to create a 360 video on an aeroplane of like a doctor going on holiday and, being off duty, but yet something happens on the aeroplane. For instance, there's an anaphylaxis to a peanut or, there's a cardiac arrest. And how does the doctor deal with it, when actually I'm off duty? And how do I deal with this cardiac arrest on an aeroplane? And because it's always been one of her worries. So what we're doing at the moment is we're looking at trying to hire either a fuselage or a simulator of an aeroplane, and we're going to staff it with. So at the moment, it's going to be a bit of a collaboration project. So we've got the local airline involved. They're going to give us some air hostesses and a pilot. And it's actually, there's loads of things on the aeroplane that can help you. So there's a med kit already that most doctors don't know about. But it's also using the communication device from the pilot to the ground, because there's always a doctor in an airport waiting for something like this to happen. So it's how do you communicate and ask for help that way. So it's a really interesting aspect that a lot of doctors worry about. If you're getting on an aeroplane and then a 9-month pregnant lady gets on, that kind of situation.
Yeah, I've so far twice I've responded to the call. Is there a doctor or is there a doctor, a nurse, or a paramedic on board?
Yeah.
So I'll give it 5. Well, basically the 10-second rule. Yeah. So I wait for 10 seconds, and if no one buzzes, I ping. I go, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a paramedic, but I know a bit of stuff. Can I be of any assistance?
And we're also thinking of throwing things in like, what happens if the doctor's had a gin and tonic? Where's the guideline on that? Are they able to help? So there's throwing in a few human factors, questionable talking points for the debrief.
And it's a key thing that people, again, they're not aware of the med kits available. Having said that, it depends on whether you're on long haul or short haul.
Yeah.
And what I can't, don't quote me now. I saw an article recently. Someone did like an audit of some of the big name airlines, and a lot of them may not have the kit that's recommended on board. So don't always
Yeah.
assume it's going to be there.
I mean, it throws up questions like who's checking the drugs, those kind of things.
yeah. I don't know if this is still a thing now, but certainly when I was a resource officer and we used to teach the immediate life support course, there was a category of people that could apply for whom it was a suitable course, and cabin crew were on that list at the time. So when it first came out, I know some centres had quite a lot of cabin crew go through ILS. I don't know if that's the same now.
No.
Certainly in my region, it's very much focused on the American Heart Association courses, and most of them do either basic life support or the first aid equivalent that does sort of CPR, AED, and first aid. But for the advanced stuff, I don't think many people are covered with that. But also, again, as you say, many people aren't aware that the telemedicine desk is available internationally, wherever you are, and every airline can patch you through to a physician that can talk you through stuff.
Yeah, and it's just that doctors would never get this kind of training, so we're finding that actually maybe there's a little project here. I say little, it's not easy to get your hands on an aeroplane these days.
Depends where you are, but sometimes it's easier than others. But it's a challenge, definitely. But wish you luck with that. And again, if there's anything I can do to help with that, please let me know.
Yeah, well, like I say, it's a bit of a collaboration project. I mean, we're really struggling with filling it. Let's just say we get an aeroplane, we then need to fill it with people. So there is little problems there. So we're thinking actually opening it up, maybe inviting, I don't know, a midwife team to come along and do a because if we're going to get the aeroplane, we might as well shoot 3 or 4 different videos.
Make most of it. Yeah, definitely.
Bang for buck kind of situation. Rich, as I knew, we were going to talk and we were going to go down all kinds of different paths, and we've been going on for 45 minutes. But what I want to touch base on quickly is how you got from the army to where you are working overseas now. And what was your thought process? And how did you ever work up the courage to cut all your strings and leave this world behind?
Thought process wasn't, well, I'd like to say it was highly calculated.
Where did the opportunity come from? Was it from anywhere in the military that invited you over?
No, it was very bizarre. I had an invitation request on LinkedIn from a headhunter. Consultant headhunter is what I was told. And it turned out what it was an office junior that had a premium LinkedIn account through work and found me through some keywords on a search. So I was contacted and asked if I was interested in a role in Qatar. And my first thought was, where's Qatar? I'd heard something about the World Cup, some controversy. So I thought, this is a wind up. This is going to be spam.
As most people would think, automatically my scam alert is going off.
So I thought, well, it's going to cost me an email with my CV. What's the worst?
With your bank account details.
So I sent it off, and then one thing led to another. Then they said, oh yeah, they're interested, and then the whole paperwork trail started, and then a few other things were happening in my home life. And to cut a long story short, a whole load of things lined up, including children moving to Australia. And when we came out here, it was supposed to be a 2-year fixed term contract, and then when we came out, it was an open-ended one. Unfortunately, it was cut short because around 2015 there was a significant drop in the price of oil internationally, and I was quite naive at the time because some of the friends I'd made out there who worked in gas and oil were being let go, and I thought, well, it's gas and oil. I'm in a hospital. I'm fine. Doesn't affect me. But was very naive to the fact that it was that gas and oil was paying my wages and was funding the hospital. So it was a hospital project that hadn't started, it hadn't opened, and they decided they were going to make a load of people redundant. So unfortunately, I was part of that, and there's several hundred people made redundant at the same time. But what I've learned, when you become an expat, your next job is not necessarily from a job advert. It's often from your network. And that's exactly what happened, is that a friend of mine had left the organization we were working for, and he'd moved to Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And when me and my colleagues were made redundant, he said, look, he was working in a different sim center. He said, look, we've got an opportunity here, some good quality people going spare. Let's take advantage. So he connected me, and I was very lucky that I got an interview and was offered a job. And then when we first went to Australia from the UK, it was something like 28, 29 hours flying time with stop-offs and stuff. And it was horrible. Your ankles are twice the size of your head. This is not pleasant at all. And then from the Middle East, your flying time is sort of 14 hours door to door, which sounds horrible, but compared to from the UK, it's easy. So that's kind of what keeps us here, really, is in this region, is that we can get back to the UK to manage any issues we have with assets there, but we can get to the family at short notice as well, should the need arise.
Okay. No regrets? Ever look back?
Certainly no regrets. Would I change or do things differently along the way? Yes, I probably would. But no, it's been an eye opener, and certainly I'm a very different person now to the one I was when I came out here. I've developed a lot more patience. I was a very impatient person. Now I sort of have learned how to sort of take things as they come. And a valuable lesson that has been taught to me a number of times since I've been out here is that you only control what you control. And there's no point trying to get yourself wound up and excited about trying to change something that you have no influence over. So that has sort of helped me sort of grow and develop as a person and a human being. So yeah, I think it's definitely no regrets. And I keep posting. We have one of the WhatsApp groups is allocated for jobs, and any jobs that come my way internationally, I share them. And if anybody is thinking about making a move to the Middle East, please feel free to give me a call or drop me a line, and I'll have a chat. I can tell you about why I'm out here and why I'm still out here after 10 years.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Rich. Like I say, I'll put your contact details in the episode description, so if anyone has got any questions, that they can reach out to you.
Sure.
And that's what most people might see your name attached to, is the one that is always spamming American jobs in the WhatsApp group. Is there anyone that has actually been brave enough to take anything like that or applied? Do you know of anybody?
No, not from the sim side of things. No, I share quite a lot of stuff on LinkedIn for other sectors as well, and people think I'm a recruitment guy. I often get people say,
"Just a strong networker." That's all.
Yeah, I'm looking for a job in banking. Can you help me? Like, I have no idea about banking. I know my PIN number, and that's about it. So it's quite unusual people's perception of you based around what you do and what you share on social media.
Yeah.
I'm a healthcare professional. I'm a sim guy. I don't recruit. I just try to share it because I've been in positions where I've been made redundant and trying to find work at short notice. It's not very pleasant. It does make you stronger. That's about the only thing I can say. But I just try and share what roles come my way to help people that may be in a less fortunate position than me, or the opposite, people might be in a very good position, but have not really thought about maybe leaving their country and going somewhere else. I'd recommend anybody that's listening to this, if you get the opportunity to go abroad, please take it, grab it with both hands. Try, if you can, particularly if you're working for the NHS, utilize the sabbatical options that are available. Don't tell your new employer that you're only going for a year. Tell them it's a job for life and you're dedicated. But keep your plan B there, because that's what happened to me. I had to give my notice in before the end of my 12 months because I was on sabbatical, and then a couple of weeks after, got made redundant. And the window had closed then. So it's fantastic. The things that you can do if you once you move, your center of your universe changes. In the Middle East, we've got amazing travel opportunities. We've got some massive airlines that have connections everywhere. In the UK, Birmingham was my local airport, and where can you get to from there in 4 hours? There's a whole load of destinations. But as soon as you come to Dubai or to Doha or to Abu Dhabi, your 4 hour radius can hit, like I think it's Emirates Airlines use it as part of their advertising blurb, that you can hit something like a third of the world's population within 4 hours. And the opportunities there are just incredible. We've got some 5-star luxury business class, first class aircraft with all the latest modern gadgets and all the luxuries you can imagine. But there's also budget airlines as well. So no matter what sort of your finances, you can still get to places that you've only heard about. The Maldives, going to the Maldives in the UK, that's kind of a bucket list, once in a lifetime thing. Here, a long weekend in the Maldives, that's very easy to do and can be affordable, very affordable. So the focus of your world changes once you change your physical location, and you get opened and exposed to a whole host of things. So I'd certainly recommend it to anybody. Give it a try.
Brill. And very quickly then, Rich, what's next for you? Have you thought about your future, and where are you going next?
That may not be down to me. So in this region, things are different. There's a lot of change and transition going on at the moment. None of us know what the future holds, but it's definitely funding out here for things like education and healthcare has been generous for the facilities. And there's some amazing. I'm very privileged to work in an amazing healthcare facility here at the moment. But the money isn't always, no one has a finite, infinite pot of money. Everyone has a finite budget now. And what was happening 10, 15 years ago, where people could just throw money at things to make them look good, isn't the case anymore. So people are being more cautious about how they're spending money, about how they're establishing new services, about whether they want to maintain the current services that they have. So I don't know. I'm optimistic. If anyone's listening, I'm always open to offers. So if you got any suggestions, I'm all ears, and I'm quite happy to go anywhere, anytime, any place for the right terms and conditions. So what the future holds, I don't know. The position I'm in at the moment is comfortable for now. The organisation itself is in a period of transition. Like most organisations, there's loads of rumours flying around. We don't know what's true. But as I said, I've learned to worry about what I can control. So if anything does happen down the line, I have very little control over that. I'm hopeful that we're in a good position. Business internally is good, but we're also seeking external opportunities. We've done quite a few projects with other people. My goals for this year really are looking at more research projects. I've got several on the go. I've got about 1,000 research projects in my head. I've just got to sit down and map them out and try and get some finished this year. But I want to try and get some publications, maybe some conference presentations available this year as well. And just trying to leave something behind is what I want to try and do. I've presented
legacy.
I've presented at a number of conferences in the past. I've done some posters, but I think I'm trying to change my view now to getting something in writing so that you've got something that is tangible and makes that contribution. I went back to a former employer in the UAE after a few years, and I was very excited to see something that I did was still there. A very simple thing. We got automatic external defibrillators installed, and they'd pass their useful shelf life, and typically they would be replaced or they'd just be binned. And it was great to see the cabinets were still there, and they'd replaced them with a new version of the one that we spec'd at the time. So that was kind of my legacy, that was still there. And I think we can all contribute to humanity. We often may not see the results of what we've done. I remember going to a conference, and I won't say the profession. I was the only non-person of that profession in the audience. And it was a case of, do you inspire people? Do people look up to you and because of what you do? And I stood up and I said, so I'm the only non in the village today. And I don't have first of all, I don't have the arrogance to say that, I went out and inspired a load of people today. I inspired a bunch of students to do this and to do that. And secondly, as a student, I wouldn't have had the confidence to say to my mentors, "Oh, you really inspired me today," or I really look up to you, because that just wasn't in my nature as well. So I think all of us in education, particularly in healthcare, we don't really know the full effects of what we've done. That kid that was sat at the back of the class that was on his phone the whole session and ignored everything you said. And then you bump into him 4 or 5 years later and he's a consultant. And he's going, "Oh, yeah, I chose this particular branch of medicine because of what you said to me in that session." You go, "What session?" "Oh, I remember. Yeah, well, the kid that sat at the back and just ignored it and was on his phone all the time." No, I was Googling what you were saying and I was looking it up and I was looking for more references and that really inspired me. It's like, oh, okay. Maybe you can make a difference.
Yeah, but then it's double-edged as well, isn't it? You could easily sway someone away from something if you're negative about it. And so,
and
it's something to be mindful of.
Yeah, and that's again, that's the power of education, particularly as simulation as a mode of education. That it can have that negative effect. And as Spider-Man's uncle said, with great power comes great responsibility.
All right, Rich. Well, what I'll do is I'll open invitation for you. So when you've got your research projects and you want to come back onto the podcast, we maybe could have a little bit of a chat about some of the work that you're doing. Feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much.
But I would like to thank you for your time today, Rich, as I knew this hour would fly by with plenty in common and plenty to talk about.
I can't believe it's so quick, yeah.
Yeah. So one last thing then, Rich. Have you got anything else that you would like to mention that we haven't covered before we sign off?
Just when you go to work, you you rock up with a positive attitude and you can make a difference to people's lives. Whether that's a team member, whether that's somebody else that you're going through sim. And when we are talking about education and sharing our knowledge with the next generation of healthcare providers, you don't know what people are going through. So you've turned up, you've had a fallout with your other half, and the cat went on the toilet on your favourite chair, and you've left the house in a right mess and you've got that to go back to. But as a profession, when you get to work, you switch off and you go into professional mode and you leave that behind. You're not the only one that's in that situation, and you have no idea what your participants, what your peers, what your colleagues are experiencing in their home life, and a lot of them are putting on a brave face when they come to work. So I think it's just important to be kind wherever you are. You have an opportunity to make a difference and you have a choice. I won't say the exact phrase, but the number one rule in life is, don't be a unpleasant person.
Someone once told me is that we all have a cup, all right, and in that cup we can only take so much. And just every time your kids are swearing at you and you've had a fallout with your partner, this cup starts to fill up. And you don't know how far people's cups are because they always hide them. But when people come into work, it could already be near the top waiting to overflow for you just to put that last little bit in. You just don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's always, take away from the cup, drink some stuff out of it rather than adding to it.
That's a very good analogy.
All right, Rich, thank you for your time today. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you, Craig.
It's been really interesting.
My pleasure.
Hearing what it's like from the other side and actually putting a face to the job adverts that people see.
Apply for one. Give me a shout if you're going to apply.
Yeah. All right, Rich. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Craig. Thanks very much.
And that wraps up this episode of the SimTech podcast. A huge thank you to Rich for sharing his incredible journey from the British Army to his impactful work in clinical simulation in the Middle East. His story is a testament of how diverse experiences can shape and enrich the world of simulation. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your colleagues and friends in the simulation community. Got any questions or feedback or ideas for future episodes? Reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the SimTech podcast, where we continue to explore the people, the tools and innovations driving healthcare simulation. Until then, keep simming.